welcome. This is the Division of Insurance's submission instruction webinar for MAT instructions. If that's not the meeting you should be in, you can exit now. For those who don't know me, my name is Tara Smith, and I recently stepped into the role of Behavioral Health Director at the DOI a little bit earlier this year. So I'm not new to the division, so you may have seen my face in other contexts. I've been involved in multiple projects, but I'm really excited to take on this role. So let me get pieces and parts all set up here. So I am joined today by Jacob Allen, who is our Behavioral Health Policy Analyst. Sarah Ion is our Behavioral Health Parity Analyst. So we together make up the small but mighty behavioral health team at the division. And we are your contacts for everything related to MAT or any of our other behavioral health findings. So I just wanted to make sure you had names and contact information for all of us. Really, our goals today are to make sure you all are understanding the content and the process to submit MAT reporting this year. We did do some updates to the regulation in this space, 4275, and we are transitioning to a new template format this year in terms of an Excel workbook. So we want to make sure you all kind of understand how that process is going to work, let you ask questions, and then gives us an opportunity to kind of clarify our expectations and walk through any final questions you might have before the filing deadline, which is coming up again on April 1st. So I am going to turn it over to Jacob to take us through the agenda, and at most of the slides, he is definitely the subject matter expert in this place. I will just do a quick housekeeping note. We are doing this in a webinar format, which we have switched to at the division due to some security issues with some Zoom bombing for state meetings, which means right now you are all in attendee mode. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. It's a very easy process. We'll then be able to unmute you, but that's kind of why you don't have control over your speakers and mics, but that's not meant to stifle conversation in any way. Again, please, if you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll let you speak. So Jacob, we'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Tara. As Tara already mentioned, my name is Jacob Allen. I'm the division's behavioral health policy advisor. Today we're going to talk about 4275. We're going to go over some of the regulatory background, filing requirements and expectations. We'll walk through high-level information in the required worksheets, chat about some of the definitions and rules, and then go over some things to avoid and best practices. As a brief disclaimer, this information in this presentation has been developed as a resource. It's not intended to supplement or be a substitute for language found in division reg or legislation. So to begin, the kind of impetus for the reporting requirements in 4275 began with 1016.710 and 1016.148. As you all may be familiar, 1016.148 illustrates the restrictions to utilization management protocols being applied to certain prescription drug benefits for used in the treatment of substance use disorders. And then in the next slide, in 1016.710, these list the reporting requirements that we are used to support the creation of the new workbook for 4275 template. So onto the regulatory overview. In the Colorado Insurance Amended Reg 4264, which has a rulemaking hearing coming on in March 2nd, some changes have been made to align with the language and requirements in 4275. And then Colorado Insurance Amended Regulation 4275 was made effective January 30th, 2026, and illustrates those reporting requirements more in-depthly. Please make sure when referring to this regulation that you're referring to the one with an effective date of 1/30/2026. So onto the applicability, reporting period, and deadline. These requirements apply to all health benefit plans subject to individual and group laws. The template submissions as well as the supporting documents are expected and required to be submitted via SURF by Wednesday, April 1, 2026 by 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. For this reporting period for 2026, for the year of 2026, we're looking at the reporting period, which is the calendar year of 2025, which is January 1, 2025 through December 31st, 2025. And we will specify this more later on in this presentation. If you have any questions regarding the templates or the instructions, please feel free to email any of the individuals of the BH team. Specifically myself or Tara will be best equipped to answer questions related to this reporting requirements. So we're going to briefly go over some general requirements, and then I'll open it up to questions and comments before we then go into the more specific worksheet information. So SURF, as you all are probably familiar, it's going to follow standard protocol. You're going to use your appropriate TOI and sub-TOI codes. You're going to specifically use the filing type listed here, annual medication assisted treatment, MAT, reporting 4275. You can leave the effective date blank. Filing types, file and use, and then be sure to upload any supporting documentation to the relevant headings within the supporting documentation tab in SURF. So some key components of our MAT filings. In the actual 4275 template, we're asking that carriers separate each template by market. So if a carrier has an individual and small group plans, then the division is expecting 2 separate templates for each of those markets. And then the division is also expecting that all worksheets are to be fully completed. Excuse me. In the additional supporting documentation, there's a few things being requested, specifically prescription drug formularies, prior auth requirements, and additional utilization management requirements. And this will be further explained a little later on. As a high-level overview, just to reiterate again, carriers are expected to report on the data for the 12-month period beginning on Jan 1 of the applicable calendar year through December 31st of that same year. And as I already said, for this upcoming reporting period, that calendar year is 2025. For the purposes of this template, when reporting on SUD category or applicable SUD, then we are carriers should refer to the 10 DSM-5 substance-related and addictive disorders classes. These are defined in the instructions as well as in the 4275 regulation. Any other definitions can also be found in Reg 4275 or in the glossary of the included instructions. And then lastly, any documents that are requested to be confidential should be submitted under the appropriate confidential supporting documents heading with a confidentiality index listing those same documents. As for the required carrier information, this is at the top of each worksheet in the workbook and is expected to be filled out appropriately and accurately for each worksheet, for each market, for each carrier. We're asking that the carrier puts their legal name, the reporting period of which should be double checked to repeat again and again to make sure that it is the appropriate calendar year being reported on, as well as the correct market. Any inaccurate reporting of the calendar year or name or market will be result in an immediate objection. So this is just a brief list of the worksheets that are expected to be completed in the workbook, and we'll go into those more specifically in a bit. As far as additional supporting documents, for the formularies, we are expecting that carriers are submitting PDF copies of their public-facing Colorado prescription drug formularies that were sold or available for each applicable market. And these should be submitted under the appropriate heading, which is prescription drug formularies in SURF. As far as additional supporting documents for prior authorization, any applicable written policies and procedures should be submitted under the the prior authorization requirements heading in SURF. And if PA is required for FDA approved MAT, then carriers should provide an overview of these policies and procedures, illustrating how the policies and procedures are following state requirements. For additional supporting documents for utilization management, the same applies. If the carrier has applied utilization management protocols for any FDA approved prescription medication approved for MAT for SUDs, then the supporting documents should be provided in the appropriate heading and serif. Okay, so that's it for the general overview, and I want to open up to any questions or general on the general requirements before moving on to the specific template information.
Again, if anybody has any questions, general requirements, SURF etiquette, SURF protocols, please raise your hand. I do see a question in the chat about provider counts. We'll address that when we get to kind of that specific sheet in the worksheet. But for now, just any questions, comments about anything that we've talked about so far.
We have formulas for each quarter. Which one do you look for? This is a great question. We would like each applicable formulary.
I think for the calendar year reporting, if you had quarterly, if you had 4 formularies, we would have to ask you to submit all of those under that tab.
Laura asked, will the enrollment and plan mapping template be required this year? No, the only applicable template that will be submitted to the DOI is the new 4275 reporting template.
Okay, seems like we're good on the basics. So let's go ahead. We've seen a couple related to provider networks. And so let's go ahead and we'll take that when we get to that tab. So stay tuned.
Okay. So moving on to the specific worksheet information. As you probably noticed, a lot of things have changed from what was initially being requested by the division. There's a new Excel workbook, as I mentioned, and new instructions to apply to that workbook. The intent of this was to condense and streamline the reporting as well as data analysis from the DOI, and in addition to providing greater clarity around the reporting requirements, as well as the definitions and the type of data and the reporting periods being looked at. As far as the instructions go, please be sure to read those instructions. They are the first worksheet in the workbook. This will greatly increase the likelihood of providing all necessary information and hopefully not lead to any objections being made in the submission. Okay, beginning on the provider information worksheet, in section 1, the division is asking for the total number of providers, in-network providers listed in the provider directory as offering MAT for SUD as a point in time number on January 1 of the appropriate calendar year, as well as on December 31st of the appropriate calendar year. The carriers are expected to list info for each provider type in the template. If other provider types that aren't listed are applicable to be reported on, then the carrier can add into the other sections where needed. If no providers in the required list on the template, if there are no providers for the specific provider type, then the carrier should indicate 0. If the carrier is not able to report on specific info, then a not available is expected to be inputted. The division recognizes that license requirements have changed and that there is a great deal of overlap between some of these categories. But the division is asking that the providers are listed in a directory of knowable numbers and counts.
So I think kind of the 2 changes here and in the network and in the template. One would be in response to some of the feedback we got from you when we sent out the draft template. It was important to kind of how should we be counting? What is that metric? And so the metric that we landed on are providers that you would have listed in your provider directory as offering that. And then to some of the questions that we see in chat in terms about having different networks and different networks across different lines of business. The other shift we're making this year, as in the template and in the instructions, is to not does not require reporting at the network level. So this would be an aggregate number of the providers across the networks that you provide within a market. And so we would expect that list to be deduplicated if it's the same number of provider, or if the provider is listed in multiple networks. But what we're looking for here, and kind of the shift we made this year, and the idea was to try to streamline reporting for you, right? So you're not having to submit a different template for each different network that you have, but rather report that information to us in the aggregate. So those are kind of the two things, the two clarifications to make related to this. Do people have questions or comments about that approach?
We can give y'all a time to type that in as we move on to the next one as well.
We'd also very much encourage you to raise your hand and talk.
That's true too.
Okay, we can continue to go through, but we will also be monitoring the chat. And again, please raise your hand. All right.
Okay, so in the same worksheet, there's a second section as well, and this is going to be reporting on specific SUD treatment programs, and then any available MAT provided at those programs. To be specific, we are not expecting OTPs to be included in this section, and those opioid treatment programs. And please refer to the definition that's listed in the instructions to understand what we mean by program. Also, we're asking for a list of the available MAT medications at those programs by name, not necessarily the number of those medications in this section. We have a hand raised.
You have a hand raised. So, Michaela, go ahead. You should be able to talk if you unmute yourself. There we go.
Okay.
I'll try again. There's a bit of an echo. Michaela, we're not hearing you. You're trying to talk. All right. Well, apologies for technical difficulties, Michaela. Yeah, mic issues. You're welcome to enter something in chat, and we can answer your question that way.
Okay, yeah, and we can always come back to the relevant slides for the questions that may come up.
Yeah. So are there any questions on SUD treatment programs? This was an area where we had some feedback from you as well, and some requests for a little more clarity. So in the instructions, we did some tweaking to our definition of SUD programs. This was actually a metric you had reported to us previously. So this year, our goal was to try to provide a little clarity on what we were looking for this section, but also not to be overly prescriptive in terms of how you would define and what you would count as a treatment program, as long as it fits in that definition. That would be what we're looking for here. Okay.
Okay, on to section 3. Pretty straightforward, hopefully. We're asking that carriers report on the total number of in-network OTP sites that are contracted per market. In addition, we're asking for the total number of unique providers that are authorized to dispense or administer methadone at these OTPs. Now, we did get some feedback from some carriers saying that they don't have that information available. So if the data is not available or not able to be collected or reported on, etc., then please, the division is asking that carriers input not available, or N-A for not available. Similarly, we're asking for any available FDA-approved MAT medications that are provided at these sites in addition to methadone. And again, these are the names of these medications, not the number. Moving on to providers by county. This is section 4 in the last section, excuse me, on this worksheet. The division is asking for carriers to report the total number of SUD providers that are listed in the provider directory as offering, it's listed there twice, sorry about that, MAT for SUD as of December 31st by county. And then the division is asking for carriers to split this out as well into the different SUD categories for opioid use disorder, alcohol use disorder, tobacco use disorder, and then any other substance use disorders that may be treated by providers. Where this information is available, the division is expecting that data is provided for these specific SUD categories. If data is not available, again, please enter N-A. And if there's no providers, enter 0. We did get some feedback from some carriers stating that it's a little difficult to report the kinds of specific SUD providers. However, the division is expecting at a minimum that OUD providers are able to be reported on, as this was required previously. And then we have provided an clarification on how these counts should be reported. If one provider is indicated as offering multiple SUD services, then they should only be counted once and then separated out for each additional specific SUD that they treat. And I've provided an example there.
All right, I think this was our last slide on this tab, then we go to the next tab. So thank you, Michaela, for entering your question. Realizing other people cannot see the chat, I don't think, except you and I, Jacob, as the host. Apologies, we're getting used to the webinar format, folks. We were Zoom meeting people, so it's a little bit different how it works in this setting. Again, a question about filling it out by line of business and not by network. So the comment here, we have providers in some networks, but not others. So if the carrier is not reporting at the network level, the numbers aren't going to be applicable to any specific network, which is just, it's a very different way of reporting the data. So I think, again, that's good feedback. I think for the purposes of reporting this year, if it's easier for carriers to go ahead and report providers by your networks, we certainly won't reject that. That's a fine way to file it. I think, again, in our minds, one of the things we're going to look at this year is, can we get meaningful data if we're just allowing you to aggregate it at the line of business level? But if that is going to be more challenging or problematic, I think we certainly would still accept data if you want to submit it by individual network. So then it would be for, however many, we would still want that separately by market. So, but by individual, what those counts look like in each of your networks for carriers that offer multiple networks.
Yes, and if it is easier to report by network, we just ask that you clarify that in the either titling or in the market subsection within each of the template worksheets to be clear about which networks are being reported on. Okay, Kara, do you mind going back just one? Chat about enrollee and utilization tab. Sorry, worksheet.
Oh, sorry. I thought it's going the wrong way. Still going the wrong way. How do I go backwards? Hang on. There we go. There we go.
Okay, so this next worksheet to be filled out is the enrollee and utilization worksheet. And this one, we are asking for the total number of unique enrollees by SUD category using specific SUD services. We got several feedback about the beginning of the calendar year, end of calendar year, and throughout calendar year counts. So we've done our best to try to explain that. If those are still unclear, please let us know now. I'll get to that in one moment, Kat. Let me finish my thought here. For the beginning of the calendar year, we have, as a result of the feedback we received, changed this date to be March 31st of the applicable calendar year. So in this instance, this will be March 31st of 2025. And that, again, this is a point in time count of the total unique enrollees using SUD services on that date. And then end of calendar year is going to be the same, where it's December 31st of the applicable calendar year. The throughout the calendar year value is the total aggregate number of unique members that are using SUD services between January 1 through December 31. The division is very much aware that these counts are not going to sum to equal each other due to the difference in utilization throughout the year. And then we are expecting and requesting that carriers are including both medical and pharmacy claims in this information. The same points apply previously. We are asking that carriers report out by SUD category as well as substance use disorder services overall. If the carriers are not able to report on this specific information, then NA should be inputted where available. And then, okay, Kat asked, on the enrollee tab, carriers don't know who is enrolled in a program as of March 31st. Are we to report claims from Jan 1 to March 31st? Considering that this is a retrospective collection of data, the division is expecting that this enrolled information is available to carriers by April 1 of the following year.
I think to put a finer point on that, Kat, right, the division has previously asked for kind of a point in time at the beginning of the year and then at the end of the calendar year in terms of a count of enrollees. And we didn't necessarily want people to have to go back to even the previous calendar year before that to look at quarter 4 of 2024 in this case to be able to get that count. So we thought by moving it into like at the end of the first quarter of the year, that would help, right? So then you're at least for the reporting purposes for the reporting block to be consistent across this entire reporting would all be still in calendar year 2025. And because people are still effectuating, you're still figuring out enrollment really in that first quarter, we thought that March 31st would actually be a better and easier time frame for you to report on rather than having you all report zeros on January 1st, which would be kind of meaningless for all of us. So I think the idea is we want you to report that third metric is the number of enrollees across the entire calendar year. And Jacob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the March 31st and the December 31st were a point in time kind of counts of who are using services.
Right. And Kat, if that wasn't a sufficient answer, please feel free to elaborate on your question. Okay, moving on to the prescription drug and formulary. Sorry, prescription.
Our hand with that, Kat. Let me unmute you and see if you want to add.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, great. Okay, so carriers, we don't know. I mean, we have membership that's enrolled, but the only way to know if they're using SUD services is to look at claims.
Right.
So if we pull claims on March 31st, you're going to get the 1 day of claims. But, a member could have had services on March 30th and it wouldn't be counted. So we really have to look at a time period of claims to know who's, air quotes, enrolled or who's using services. So that's why, to me, the only way to know who's using services at the beginning of the year is to use a time frame of what we're looking at claims. So I would think it'd be like January 1 to March 31st, whoever's using the count of enrollees using services during that first quarter would be the way to do it. But it sounds like that's not what you're wanting. So I'm still unclear on how carriers should be pulling this.
It's a good question, Kat, and you're catching me in my newness in this role in terms of how we've done this in the past. My understanding was it was actually like we were getting that full look across the entire year, right? To your point, somebody could be using services at any time during a month, not just at a distinct point in time. So my understanding was that this metric, we really did want to see how does that look, right? How did that look at the beginning of the year? Were there more, just what was that change between the beginning of the year and the end of the year count? So it would be that pull it on this date, and anybody that had SUD claims report that number.
Well, but yeah, like
Recognizing it's not going to be right? Like to your point, it's going to be a very just unique subset of members that just happen to land on that point in time.
so you want only claims that had a service on March 31st? Because that could be a weekend. I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked at the calendar, but
Yeah, no, yeah.
And we do have the ability to go back to the prior quarter. So we could compare fourth quarter 2024 to fourth quarter 2025 and look at claims in those two quarters. But to pull it on just services on one day, I don't know that that's going to get what you're wanting.
Yeah, I see your point. Let us take that back. I think it actually may make more sense to have that beginning of the year count be for the first quarter, that end of year count to be for the fourth quarter, right through December 31st. So we're getting more meaningful data across time periods, and then having that total calendar year. Which does, I think, make more sense. So we will send out that clarification, and do an update on the instructions so that where the instructions and the template are both currently posted, they are labeled with V and the date. So right now they're labeled with V20. So we will update that with that clarification. I think that is going to be much more meaningful data to not just pick a random date on the calendar and have you count that out.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kat. Appreciate it.
Yep, thanks.
Appreciate you all working with me as we're thinking through some of this in real time. Any other questions and comments here? All right, Jacob, let's go ahead and go to the next tab.
Right, sounds good. So for the next tab, worksheet, keep getting those mixed up. We're looking at the prescription drug utilization management formulary information. On formulary information. In section 1 of this worksheet, we're asking carriers to report the total aggregate number of MAT prescriptions that were filled in the calendar year of 2025 in this example. I had a train of thought and then lost it. And then the second piece there is we're asking for the average number of MAT prescriptions filled by member in that same calendar year. Just to be overtly clear, when we say MAT prescriptions, I don't know if we said this at the top, we're talking about prescription drug benefits used in the treatment of substance use disorders. And that's defined in the instructions as well as in 4275, but I just wanted to be clear here. So, and then in section 2, based off of feedback, we've adjusted this format a little bit. So now the division is requesting carriers to report on the prescription drugs that are being utilized that had protocols attributed to them. So just to restate, carriers are expected to provide the prescription drug, the protocols, claims, and denial information for any and all substance use disorder medications that were subject to a utilization management protocol. And then in the subsection of this section, there is a list for the applicable SUD treated. And we've gotten a lot of feedback and questions about what that means. And so in the instructions, we've listed out a prescription drug table for reference. We removed the RxQE reporting entity due to the confusion and concern around collecting information regarding that. So the division is expecting carriers to identify these drugs based off of the methods or mechanisms that are most useful to the carrier to determine this information by substance use disorder category. And if that's still unclear, please feel free to raise your hand or type a question in the chat. Seeing none, hearing none, I guess we could move forward. Okay, so this is pretty much the same information, except we're requesting info on the non-formulary drugs that may have had that had requests by members during the same calendar year. So again, this is data for MAT for SED, not on the formulary, that was requested by members during that calendar year. You're still expected to provide the prescription drug, any applicable protocols, the request and the denials information, and the same thing applies for the applicable SUD treated. Please refer to the prescription drug table that's in the instructions for reference to the drugs being looked at that are FDA approved for specific SUD categories, as well as using whatever methods are most useful to the carrier to determine this information, whether it's the use of GNC and DC codes and mapping those to the relevant DSM-5 categories. Okay, on to the lowest cost tier placement. For this worksheet, the division is requesting carriers to just report on any of the FDA approved MAT prescription drugs that were placed on the lowest cost tier of the prescription drug formulary. This has the same definition, lowest cost tier has the same definition as found in Regulation 4275, and it has also been copied to the instructions document for the template. To be clear, we're only asking for the specific medications that were placed on the lowest cost tier. Any other FDA approved MAT medications that were on higher tiers should not be listed in this worksheet. For any other SUD categories, please refer to the DSM-5 as well as the prescription drug table in the instructions. The division is aware that there are only three SUD categories, of which there are substance use disorder, FDA approved prescription drug benefits, as well as a couple for ORMs or opioid reversal agents, as of February 25, 2026.
Questions or comments here?
Okay. On to the next, second to last worksheet. The division is asking for carriers to write out their answers to the questions listed in the workbook on the specific worksheet. The questions are listed in the workbook as well as listed here, and these are requirements from the regulation. This is high-level information, but we are expecting that carriers are not cutting and pasting language from policy documents. And if a carrier writes refer to document, then it will be immediately objected and the carrier will be asked to resubmit. Any supporting documentation that will be applicable to the responses in this worksheet should be submitted in the relevant headings in SURF.
Comments on this one? Right.
Okay, and then finally, we've come to the formulary and coverage attestation worksheet. Basically, the division is asking and requiring carriers to attest to certain statements that are listed out in the worksheet. The specific attestations of most importance are whether or not PA was applied to certain FDA-approved MAT for SUD, and if they were applied, that those were conforming to reg and statute. The same for step therapy or other quantity limits, or other utilization management protocols. You either attest that they were or were not applied. If they were applied, attesting that they conform reg and statute. And then lastly, attesting that any and all available and applicable supporting documentation have been provided and submitted to the division in SERV.
Questions, comments there?
This is just a trio of the high importance definitions to refer to. These are in the instructions as well as in 4275. Okay. Are there any final questions, concerns, comments, clarification points to the level of Kat, who thankfully provided that insight and clarification?
Answer for so we just got a question. If you're a new market entrant for 2027, is this reporting required? And the answer is no. This will be, it's for the previous calendar year. So if you don't have have anything to report during that time period, you are not required to submit, but thank you.
One last
another question from Mary Kirby. For alcohol, tobacco, and aura, will the division be defining how carriers should break out those categories? CPT codes or diagnosis codes? And the answer is this year we're not, Mary. We're gonna allow carriers to use their own methods to determine what falls into those categories and kind of see what data we get. Again, we didn't want to be overly prescriptive, knowing you all have different systems and ways of doing things. If that becomes problematic and we're seeing data that's looking dramatically different, that's indicating very different methodologies, it's something we could revisit for reporting next year. But for right now, we are not going to be specific in how you're determining that. Question, when will the meeting recording and slides be available? Great question. We will get those posted probably within the next hour. So again, I was just actually putting in the link to the ACA annual filing information website, which is where this reporting lives. That's where the most current template and the most current the recent instructions are posted. So we will be getting this information. We will post it there as well. I think the two things that we will take back from this meeting, one are updating the instructions so that if it is easier for people to report on provider counts by network, rather than doing that aggregate count, we would accept that reported either way, but we'll make sure that's clear in the instructions. And then we will also be updating around that first quarter and the last quarter rather than the 3/31 or the December 31 point in time. But we'll get those posted so you'll have that information available. All right, I have now lost track of where we are in the questions, Jacob. There's still some outstanding.
We had an additional one from Brandy. Brandy, if you don't mind elaborating a bit more on your question, that would be great. And then Mary. So I did see this question before, and this has been clarified a bit in the instructions. The division wants to see all drug data in the sense that we're looking at medical and pharmacy, but when it comes to the agents dispensed, we're just looking at how many members are using these agents. We don't want the count of the agents being dispensed, if that makes sense.
So I think that's helpful, but the question was, does the division want to see all drug data independent of medical services or seeing a provider? So in the example of like tobacco use disorder, a member doesn't necessarily need to see a provider. So should the reporting there be how many units were dispensed or the members? And in that case, we would want to see the count of the members. And Brandy, I'm also not sure, confirm the additional provider specialties that need to be reported. The provider type categories that we're asking are specifically listed in that section of the template. And then if there are others that are providing SUD services, we have another category for you to report. But I'm not sure if that is addressing the question or not.
Tracy, to confirm your question where you asked, when you say unique members using these drugs, it's any member, not those who have an RX treatment under their medical claim. If I'm understanding the clarification point correctly, then yes, we are looking at all unique members using these drugs, regardless of whether or not they are prescribed them in a medical setting or if they are got them at a pharmacy through a pharmacy claim.
Does that answer your question, Tracy? Treatment under medical to be included. Here, I think I can actually unmute you on my end now that I know. All right.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I could
No,
not
sure,
figure
sure.
No, so I think my question is in the past, what I think we've done is we've went and identified those members, right, that are getting that SUD treatment under their medical benefits. So, right, it would be that diagnosis, what you guys were talking about earlier with the medical portion. When we go to pull the drugs, are you looking for any member that got drugs that could be classified for SUD treatment, or is it specific to those members who have a diagnosis on that medical claim that they got that treatment? So they're enrolled in a treatment program, basically. I think what we've done in the past is we've looked at, hey, these members have a diagnosis that they're in treatment for SUD or OUD. And then we take those members and we run those against the pharmacy claims to say this subset of members who have these treatment diagnoses are also got prescription drugs. So we kind of did we started here, right? And then we led here. But I'm wondering, do you want to see any member who could possibly be getting SUD drugs under their prescription benefit, regardless of, hey, they have some sort of medical diagnosis that kind of drove that? It may be one and the same, to be honest, right? But there could be situations where a member goes to just like their normal doctor and asks for something, and it maybe isn't necessarily engaged or showing them engaged in like some sort of treatment program for that or treatment approach. So are you looking just for those members that have kind of that, hey, we've identified through that medical benefit that they're being treated for these conditions?
I think yes. I think it's the former methodology that you were using, right? And however you guys are grouping someone to identify that they have this diagnosis, and then these are the medical services that are associated with that, and then these would be the prescription drugs that were associated with that. So I think that kind of pathway that you described is perfectly great.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure. All right. Any other questions, comments? You can either raise your hand or you can also enter it in chat and we can unmute you or. One more minute. Holly, unmute. You should now be able to talk. If you are talking, I think you need to unmute yourself on your end.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you. Yes, great.
Thank you. I have a quick question on the RX and UM formulary tabs. Do you also want us to identify drugs that are claims on the UM side? Because we do have drugs that are like, for lack of a better way, buying bill, possibly. Are you looking for those drugs to be identified as well, or just pharmacy claims?
Can you ask that one more time, Holly? I'm sorry, I'm not quite understanding. I want to make sure I respond
Yeah.
correctly.
I haven't done a check, but if there are SUD drugs that are being requested on the UM side for whatever reason, and it goes through medical claims, are you looking for identification of those drugs as well, or is this strictly pharmacy drugs filled at pharmacies?
Yeah, it would be either pharmacy or medical. It would be the drug. It would be the drug that has the associated with it, whether it's on your pharmacy or medical side.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And just to be clear, these are the FDA approved prescription drugs used in the treatment of substance use disorders.
Yeah.
Based off of how we've defined substance use disorder and MAT in our regulation.
Okay, and I see the comment. It would be helpful to add that to the instructions. We have been reporting RX regardless of medical claims, so we can add that clarification in as well. All right, any other questions, comments? I'm not seeing any other hand. I think we have hit everything that has come in through the chat. One more beat, awkward pause.
Speak now, forever hold your peace.
Okay, well, thank you all for your time this morning. Thank you for your input. This is really helpful for us to make sure that we're being clear in what we're asking of you. Appreciate the feedback for the newbie in the group in terms of kind of the best way to be getting the best data. Definitely appreciate you all thinking about that and assisting us in a couple of places. So we will get some updated instructions out. We will get the meeting recording posted. And then we do have a list of the FAQs. So I think it's going to be worthwhile to kind of, in addition to some updates to the instructions, also kind of start a working document of FAQs that we'll post in that same place on the division's website. So as you all are continuing, as you're starting to fill this out and submit, we're still here and available for questions. So if you have something, please give us a ping. And if it's a question that we think is good for everyone to know, we'll go ahead and be adding it to that running document of FAQs, which we'll just keep posted until the 1st of April. Okay, well, thanks again, everybody. We greatly appreciate your time. You know where to find us if you have any additional questions. All right, happy Wednesday, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.